So I wanted to talk about generic ENS thing, but I thought this audience is quite technical, so I'm just going to switch to technical talk. It's called ENS cross-chain. Is it okay, you guys? Okay. Well, it doesn't matter. Okay. ENS cross-chain integration strategy, and we are not at Devcon Bogota. We are in Barcelona, but this is a slide. I'm reusing the slide, and so ENS. I think half the people have it. So if you have ENS, we have a printer which you can print out the name tag. So speak to Mohammed, who's there, or me, and also who went to Devcon. Okay, so did you get this thing? Okay, so this is an NFC card where you can basically tap it and then you can get a POAP. And we gave to 2,000 people. And I was going to talk about that, but I can talk if you come to ENS booth. And but one ideal thing is, so ENS is becoming kind of ubiquitous among web3 space, that if you get matoken.eth, you can look it up on MetaMask, or you can go to OpenSea, matoken.eth, and you can see my collection. Or if you go to Etherscan, and you can see all my YOLO and the DJ and stuff. Or if you go to app POAP, and you can see all the events I went. That's the ENS you should know of. But so one thing people often hear is that, okay, what's your L2 strategy? Because it's not so much nowadays, but especially last year, gas price went crazy. And ENS started back in 2017 where gas price wasn't expensive, nor ETH price was expensive. So it was relatively okay to put all the text record of, ENS is not only about storing the Ethereum address, but also your IPFS content hash or like text record such as avatar. So this is my ENS name associated with my PFP. This kind of information is stored as a text, which costs lots of gas price. So it's quite not hard, but it's expensive for people to just keep updating the record. So our idea is how we can leverage L2 or especially roll-up space to store the data. And we've been doing it for almost 2 years. And people keep asking, so when's L2, when's L2? And I wanted to say it's actually some of the components are already there and you can use it today. And some of them are still under development. And if I have a chance, I will go under the foot. And our roadmap is that, so one of the example is CB.id. Do you know what this is? Anyone? So Coinbase. Do you know Coinbase? Okay, so Coinbase is kind of one of the biggest exchange. Now that FTX is gone, so there's either centralized one is Coinbase or Binance. And we recently had a partnership with Coinbase, so that Coinbase actually issues subdomain to everybody or when they have their Coinbase Chrome extension. So this is when you claim their profile, Inoue Makoto.cbid. And if you claim on their Chrome extension, you can also actually see, and another thing is, ENS name is not just ETH. You can actually import your DNS name as a ENS name. So like, for example, wallet called Argent, they actually have an ENS name called Argent XYZ. And Coinbase is actually, they have an internet domain name called .cb.id. You can import that as a ENS name. The idea is many brands often get squatted. But if you have a domain name, rather for example, Apple.s is squatted on someone. And it costs like 100 ETH or something. But you can actually, Apple, if it wants to use ENS, they can turn apple.com as an ENS name. They did that, and because CBA.id is cheaper. Then what they did is once you have their Chrome extension, you can set their profile information like, my avatar, my email, all the stuff. And if you set it on their extension, you can actually see that on our ENS manager, which we look up through the Ethereum main chain. And so this one is, I haven't explained how it works, but idea is before you had to pay a lot of gas in L1, but this one people didn't have to pay any gas at all. That sounds too good to be true, but it is. And another example is Lens. Who knows Lens? Half? Okay. So that's a social kind of network. 50 minutes. Yeah. We already talked 50 minutes? No. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So Lens is in Polygon, and the Lens has profile name, and this is Stani. Stani has the Lens on their Lens profile on Polygon, and who has Lens profile? Oh, two. Okay. Yeah. So because I think they are still restricting the user. Yeah. I have one too. Anyway, if you have it, interesting thing is Stani.lens, if you see it, you see same addresses. It's also subdomain of stani.lens.xyz. I already mentioned that Lens team, I don't know if Lens has a lens.is, maybe squatted, but they have imported lens.xyz, and they did this magical integration so that even it's in that their profile information is in Polygon, you can look it up on the Ethereum main chain as stani.lens.xyz. And yeah, you can, last time I checked, it was broken. So don't do it. But if you go to actually OpenSea, and Etherscan, and if you search stani.lens.xyz, you can actually see the same address there. So it's kind of interconnected. And there's someone also did something called Opti names, that you can actually get a free subdomain under Optimism, but you can also look it up through Ethereum. And this was a fun example I find on Twitter, that basically this integration allows you to store your record into anywhere, literally. Then this guy actually said, okay, I'm going to put in the Google spreadsheet. So he actually did the integration by looking at all the information on our doc, and he did the integration. Then what he did is he basically, this spreadsheet is actually their database, and if you update the record there, you upload the text record here as well, which was quite amazing, even though it's quite centralized. You had to trust Google, all the stuff. And so this off-chain, we call it, so far, I didn't do L2 integration. I did kind of so-called off-chain integration where you get the data outside of Ethereum chain. And to do that, we had to make some changes, and we had to ask some library or wallet to support this specific thing. And currently, already, if you use, who uses EtherJS? Yeah, okay, so if you use EtherJS, this is already supported. So as Web3 Pi from V6, Web3J, WAGMI, and WAGMI use EtherJS underneath, so it's already supported. So if you if you're creating dApps or something, you should think about issuing, doing this integration and issue subdomain to your users using this method. And there also wallet, there's an Alpha wallet, the Argent, and all this stuff already supported. And yeah, so what you've seen so far is the fact that you can basically store the ENS record anywhere. Normal database, Polygon, Optimism, and which requires no or little gas. And BART names are available on L1. And BART, as I see, you can store in a Google spreadsheet. And what you have to do is you kind of have to trust middleman, which I explain in the next chapter. And yeah, so under the hood. So that whole thing I explained is all in the doc. So if you are kind of intrigued how these things works, only thing you need to be aware is that you just scan that QR code and go to this doc page and read more. But I'll go through. So ENS is relatively small, basic smart contract, which was built back in 2017. It consists of 3, and but base is basically a huge phone book. Like if you have a name and you have a phone number, like ENS, if you have a name, you have your Ethereum address. But one thing unique is ENS itself, registry contract itself doesn't hold your record, but it returns another contract called Resolver. And Resolver is in charge of storing the data. And the reason we do is this ENS registry part is actually non-upgradable, but you can actually update the logic by switching the Resolver to the different one. So we've been running for almost like 5 years, and during the course, whenever we add a new feature into the new record set, we basically repoint the resolver to the newer version. That's how we do the upgradability as well. And this CCIP new protocol, 10 minutes, okay, called CCIP read, is to add a new resolver, which changes from storing and returning the Ethereum addresses and other records to returning so-called gateway server. And this uses three request model called revert, request, verify. And so this one, let's say it says resolve, but it could be like, this is a call to get your address. Rather than returning address, it returns the error with the information about the URL called gateway URL. And the reason we, rather than returning this URL information but return the error, is that just so that we can keep the same interface of the return method. That usually return method returns bytes memory, but if you want to return different information only when it's in it has done this integration, you have to have a different function. But by doing this, we can kind of infer all these extra information, which has URLs, call data, and this is a callback function selector ID, and this one actually extra data. And what it does is, so this in the previous one, it returns extra URL, and your client, most of the time, it's Ether.js called the gateway server, which basically implements the ways to fetch the data from Excel database or like a chain. And the example, and this is a kind of library created by Chainlink CCIP read server. But what it does is, in case of something like Coinbase or Lens, you have no way to trust external data. So what we do in the example is like the gateway server acts as a middleman, so that intermediate gateway server fetch the data, and they attest by signing the signature. And then in L1, callback function, which is specified in the error code, verify that this is signed by the gateway that name trust. So this is how it works with the returning the data from anywhere. And then I think that combined thing is, that's a framework you need if you want to store some of the record into the L2. But main goal, use case of this framework is you want to issue subdomain in the L2. And how you do is we have another framework called Wildcard, which is it's very simple. It's just a client side that if you, let's say if I have a name called a.matokun.is, if the subdomain doesn't exist in L1, all it does is ask its parent, matokun.is, to say, hey, do you actually know anything about this subdomain? And that parent domain returns the data from other place, could be the gateway through the L2. And with these two combinations, one consideration, I think, if you are the data people, one thing, because now it's in off-chain, it doesn't actually emit any on-chain events. So now, until now, you could actually get the subdomain information from like a Dune Analytics or the graph because it emits events. But because now subdomain information is all off-chain, it's not. And also, as you saw, like in the gateway service, I was signing the signature. Sorry, signing signature, and so that means I was actually having my key somewhere on the server. So if the server is hacked, people could actually, malicious actor could actually, fake all the addresses. So like all subdomain goes to my address. So like if you send to Makoto.Coinbase ID, CB.ID, it could go to the hacker's place. So there's some security concerns. And hence, for that reason, all these people have to maintain gateway service on their own. And so if that's, so far all things is implemented in the off-chain resolver, contrast. So if you want to do something like this, you can do that with this. And what's next is, so we've done two things. And the two things we are doing right now is cross-chain data referral. Reading the data itself can be done through L1. But if you want to write the data, you kind of have to know where the data is coming from. So Coinbase team actually proposed things called CCWDP, EIP 5599. And they actually did a hackathon during the East San Francisco. So if you go to East San Francisco's winner of the ENS and Optimism Prize, you can actually see the working example there. And another thing I'm working on right now is, as I mentioned repeatedly, current version you have to trust the database, also the gateway. But we are working on a new one called L2, rollup based resolver, where interesting about rollup is rollup relies on security on L1 by batch kind of committing their hash of the state into the L1 core data. That means you can actually use that logic to verify that this data existing on L2 within L1. So we are using that one. So what it implies is that, like, if gateway services got hacked, the hacker could stop preventing people returning the data, but they cannot fake the data because we can always verify in the L1. So that's the one we are working on. And I think last week I just made it work on Goerli. So if you go to, I think, opresolver.is, the data actually is stored in Optimism, but you can see it from L1. So that's actually working. And if you are interested, so this is the prototype Nick did 2 years ago, and at that time I didn't have a working example, but now I'll update the code. But if you go to github.com.ens domain/op-resolver, I'm not sure if anyone remember, you will see the latest working example I just implemented last week. So I'm personally excited. I don't know how many people got excited, but okay. Woo! Yes, thank you. And thank you. And what did I say? L2 canonical registry and bridge. I don't remember what it says, but thank you. Sorry. You can see how unprepared, because that was a talk I gave months ago. But people kept asking about, like, what to do with L2 and the stuff. So, okay, I'm not sure how much of this made sense, but if you want to know more, I'll be there at the ENS booth, and you can ask this or just talk about ENS. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah. Yeah. Any questions? Well, okay. Great.
Any compliments?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and if you have ENS name, we can print the name badge, and also come and see. I have a personal POAP, which you can scan. So if you're the POAP fanatic, just yeah. Okay.
Have a question. Any chance we could get the card here?
This one?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, so sad. It was great in Devcon, by the way. I didn't get it, but
so
friends did.
initially, the talk was all about how we did that during Devcon. Yeah. Yeah, if you go to IYK, they sell you for I think $90 or something.
Okay.
So you can buy it too.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're trying to do something similar next year in other events. So stay tuned. So that you can get this one.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. If you have no idea what this is, come talk to me after.